Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana, and this is my little corner of the internet in which I review books. I like to do one book at a time, long format. That's my jam. And so in today's video, I had to feed myself. I'm not even kidding. I just had a substantial snack, which consisted of a slice of bacon. I love bacon. And a piece of toast that had like dried fruit in it with peanut butter on top, because I just finished recording a different review. At the end of that review, I started to get the shakes. All of a sudden, my body was like, feed me, lady. And so I was like, you know what? Let me stop, because this review is not a positive review. Could probably tell by the thumbnail. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. And so it was not appropriate for me to do this review hangry, because it's already going to be snarky. If you are a Sally Rooney fan and a Conversations with Friends fan, and you do not like to hear criticism, not even criticism, like a complete teardown of this book and Miss Sally Rooney, this is not for you. But you know, I'm willing to put it out there. I don't care. I already posted this on Instagram, and actually the comments were like, you articulated this in a way that I haven't figured out how to word it, and you worded why I do not get on with Sally Rooney or her books, or particularly this book. I have friends, that's something squeaking back here, that's my chair. I have friends who I adore, who like Sally Rooney, and we just use it as a nice way to banter between the two of us. I am not a fan, as I've said, of Sally Rooney. A year ago, I read her short story, Mr. Sally, which was my first introduction to her work. And I was like, well, let me give this a chance. You know, maybe there's something I'm going to glean from this. I really disliked Mr. Sally. I just don't like her writing style. And the reason why I even had Sally Rooney in my TBR, and I had all her novels, not anymore, was because she's in my millennial fiction little reading challenge that I'm doing. And so it's almost impossible. You can't talk about millennial fiction without talking about Sally Rooney. I still had Normal People on my to-read list and Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I got rid of them after I read this book unread. I have a Bookstagram friend who I happily ship them off to. They deserve to be in a place that's going to appreciate them. After I finish this review, this book is out of my life. I'm giving it away. This book, I hated it. This is, disclaimer, the worst book I have ever read, ever. If you like snarky reviews that are brutally honest, I'm here. That's what I do. Just because I read something and it's popular, I'm not going to go with the flow. I'm going to say what I feel, and, you know, I can handle it. All right, let's jump into this. I isolated myself from criticism so I could behave badly without losing my sense of righteousness. All right, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Does this book or this author need an introduction? I don't think so. Sally Rooney has won awards. Her books have won awards. I don't get why, but okay. In Conversations with Friends, the main character and narrator is Frances. And this book takes place in Ireland. All of these characters are Irish, along with her best friend Bobby. They befriend an older married couple. And by older, they have about maybe 10 to 15 years on these young 20-somethings. Nick and Melissa, so that's the older couple. Melissa's a photographer, Nick is an actor. Frances and Nick enter into a cryptic affair, Nick being a married man. And throughout the narrative, Frances is musing over what it means to be a self and to have an identity, and can one truly be a unique individual. So this is how this is how I break down all of my reviews. If you are new to my channel and you're only here because you're like, this person is talking about Sally Rooney, what's her take? When I break down reviews of a book, I go through all of the themes to show whether I'm pro or con the book, for, loved it, hated it, whatever, to show that I did not miss what the book was about. I get what Sally Rooney is doing, I just don't like it. Fight me. So yes, if you are into existentialism and crises of the self, which is my jam, I love an existential novel. This is not my jam. Yes, I get what Sally Rooney is doing. I just don't care for how she does it. And I have so many examples showing what she's doing. and why I don't like how she does it. I have never been shy about the fact that I do not like Sally Rooney's writing. And after reading this book, I am convinced that if we ever met in person, which we probably never will, and if I ever saw her in person, I'd probably walk the other way, we would not be friends. I'm not even laughing. Like, this, I'm not even joking. Like, this is one of the only authors, if not the only author I've ever read from, that if we were to meet in person, we are oil and water. I would not get on with this individual. I think I'm intense. Like, if you can't tell the way I review books, like, I'm into it. And I'm just like, what? We just want to be friends, and that's okay. And I'm the type of person, I don't need everybody to like me, so whatever. Like I said, I hate this book. I do not use the word hate a lot with books. I hate this book. I loathed it. It is the worst book I've ever read, ever. Let's move forward. I have never rolled my eyes so much at a book. This book is cringy. It's cringy. The main focus of Conversations with Friends is, do people really have authentic personalities? Rooney is arguing no, that they don't. And I have done some research on Sally Rooney and her own beliefs. I've watched interviews of her, and she does align herself more with Marxism. And this is actually a concept in Marxism, that the emphasis is on the collective more than the individual. And so when you have an emphasis on, I'm paraphrasing a lot, when you have an emphasis on the collective and society and the societal identity, the individual is really taking on the identity of the collective. And when you have these societal forces on you, how much can a person really be an individual? I actually love conversations like that. Debates on the collective versus the individual. I was also a major of sociology, and we talked about this a lot, and I've studied Marx at the academic level. I don't like Marx, for the record. He was twisted. He was not anybody that, to me, he's not a role model in any way. He was a jerk and very, very dark. If you read some of his poetry, the guy was probably needed an exorcist. Okay. However, again, am always fascinated by this idea of the collective versus the individual. Where does the individual stop and the collective begin? I believe that these things are on a spectrum. And I do think that there is value in community in the collective. However, I find Rooney's take on this in her book, both her book and from her own words when I've read them in articles, I find her take to be that no one is truly unique, to be depressing and in a completely dull and unimaginative way to look at people in life. Because from my perspective, and again, if she had written this in a better way, I'm like, I don't agree, but fascinating. I believe a good writer can make anything appealing. You don't have to agree. I am also arguing here that I don't think Sally Rooney is a good writer, but I'll get to that more into the end or throughout the body of the book. Because from my perspective, yes, we are all products of our environment, our home life, how we're raised, where do you live, but everybody still has certain unique characters that are unique to them. Even twins have slight differences. I have 2 siblings, and we were raised by the same parents. But there are little quirks to us where you can tell, wow, these 2 people are actually quite different. I just think it's just so boring to think of a person like that when we each have our own unique fingerprints, and there are just things about an individual that make them unique regardless of the commonality and the social structures that are around groups of people. I just think that it's boring to look at life that way. And it's easy to, if you really wanted to, it's actually easy to dispute that claim that nobody is truly unique. I disagree. I also am a person with a very strong personality, so I don't fit into this book at all. I don't fit into this mindset at all. See what I mean? I'm just like, I think personally, and if this sounds arrogant, it sounds arrogant. I don't care. I find like I, as myself, just prove this whole theory wrong. Because nobody acts like this. Okay, No one is that boom. Sally Rooney is kind of boring, but okay. So here's how she presents this theory. I was aware of the fact that he, Nick, could pretend to be anyone he wanted to be. And I wondered if he also lacked a real personality the same way I did. So Nick is an actor, like I've said, and so Rooney plays on this, that he will always remain an enigma because he's always masking. He knows how to shift in and out of these personalities. Life is the theater for him. It's the stage. And I get the idea. This isn't the first time an author has done this, but it's just so boring in this book. It is not innovative at all. It's just shallow the way that it's done, and it's very boring. And I get that he's an actor, but Nick is dull as bricks. Everyone in this book is boring, and I get that's the point in some case, because none of these characters truly seem unique. They all seem like caricatures of something in society, but it's just so tritely done. I would rather watch grass go in real time. I'm not even kidding. I would rather read Dickens narrating how a chair looks in a parlor for 2 paragraphs. And my boy Chuck does this. He goes on about one thing for 2 pages, but it's so beautifully written. I'm like, I'll allow it. This is so boring. I'd rather watch grass grow in real time. Another quote. I felt excited, Ryder ready for the challenge of visiting a stranger's home, already preparing compliments and certain facial expressions to make myself seem more charming. To make myself seem charming. I enjoyed playing this kind of character, the smiling girl who remembered things. Bobby told me she thought I didn't have a real personality, but she said she meant it as a compliment. Mostly I agreed with her assessment. At any time, I felt I could do or say anything at all, and only afterward think, oh, so that's the kind of person I am. Again, I get the concept. And like I said, this is an idea that is explored in literature throughout the ages. What makes an individual? Is the individual truly unique? Do you have a unique personality? Do you not? Also, it's so repetitive. The amount of times real personality, that those 2 words, is in this book, I'm just like, synonyms, people, synonyms, get a thesaurus. And again, but in conversations with friends, it's so shallow and so repetitive that it fell very flat for me. Frances, I get it. Frances has no personality. Frances is duller and blander than overcooked, unseasoned, instant white rice. That is how boring Frances is. She has no personality at all, period. And Bobby, in a way, can be seen as Frances's antithesis. Bobby is so much more sure of herself, edgy, she's opinionated. And again, Bobby is still a caricature of a young 20-something who's just so sure of herself and so opinionated. She just pushes her opinion on everybody else and doesn't know when to shut up. Probably this book would have been more interesting if it was from Bobby's perspective or Bobby's narration. But again, Bobby is still a caricature because Bobby is just this idea of a person who is like this type of 20-year-old. Early 20-year-old. Not all 20-year-olds are like this, but she's a caricature here. Just, we got to roll with it. Again, like I've said, I'm going to say this a lot. I have read so many novels at this point that tackle topics like this that by the time I got to conversations with friends, I was like, this is so trite. Like, she's not doing anything innovative or unique here. She's not putting a unique spin on something old. This is the same old tale to the same old tune, but done in the most boring way possible. I'm going to give some examples. To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf is an amazing way to look at how others view us, how we view ourselves, how we view our identities in the spaces and time in which we're in. Read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf if you want a very innovative, clever, complex way in which this is done. I do get that not everybody gets on with Virginia Woolf. Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors, which was a 2022 release. She also nails it. She has quotes in there about how The more people strive to be unique, the more they end up looking similar, especially in different groups of people. Like, how have you noticed that you can pick out an art student almost anywhere in the world? There is a commonality to them. There's a thread. And Mellor's characters also read a bit like caricatures, but they have this wit and they're dynamic, and they're constantly being molded throughout the narrative. Excellently done. Again, this take to me was just felt overly contrived. It felt forced. I actually felt like this whole book was trying too hard. From here, Conversation with Friends attempts to explore how there are false realities of the self. Again, I think that's actually an interesting theme. This is something that I think that we can all relate to, how we put on different selves depending on our social environments. It's called masking. The dinner party depicted in the hold on, I have typos in this. 1 second. Let me see if I can find this. The dinner party depicted actually, no, there was no typo here. I find her writing to be very convoluted, and at times too oddly constructed, that I'm reading a sentence and I think there are typos in the sentence. I'm not kidding. Okay. I'm going to have them talk about editing at the end of this book, and editors, and what the heck are these editors doing in these contemporary novels? I don't know. The dinner party depicted in the photographs bore only an oblique relationship to the one we had actually attended. That sentence needs some reworking, but okay. This is what she's saying. Melissa is a photographer, and so in the book, she's taking these photos of Francis and Bobby, and Francis is very shallowly reflecting on these photos, and she has some commentary on them. There is this idea of seeing oneself in the third person, from the outside in, and the photograph portrays this idealized reality. While there's a lot of grit in actual life that happens on the back end outside of this photo. So the photo is this picture of space and time that was staged. It's an ideal, but yet real life, it's never going to capture what's really going on behind the scenes, right? Distant observers of the photo see a seemingly perfect reality, but it's a fabrication. I did wonder, and if she is doing this, I will agree with Sally Rooney on this. I wondered if she's taking a jab at social media, and rightly so, because social media is so curated and frankly fake. People really have no idea what's going on in a person's life, yet the photo carries a weight to portray the self in a way that the person chooses to be portrayed. I get what she's doing here, but in this, it is so boring. Theme of the book, boring. But I agree with her here, if that's what Sally Rooney is doing. And I have a suspicion she does, because Sally Rooney does not have social media at all, which I applaud that. Especially this day and age as a public figure. I applaud public figures who choose not to have social media. How many times have we, because what is social media? It's a highlight reel. And sometimes when people show too much reality, you're like, you need to take it down 1,000. I don't need to know all of that business. But I have people that I know personally, and I mean intimately know them. I can look at their social medias and tell they're lying, because people are trying to project an image that isn't true, because they're really trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? So I get that. I'm here for that concept. Here's a good quote to kind of, again, portray what Rooney is trying to do here. I could see a care label bunched inside the seam of the slip she was wearing, which destroyed the effect of reality for me, although the slip and its care label were undoubtedly themselves real. I conclude that some kinds of reality have an unrealistic effect. It's this idea of breaking the fourth wall. We also put other people on pedestals. We also see people and we have this ideal version of them, but then there are always these little things that break that facade. It breaks the fourth wall. And by the fourth wall, it's something where you realize you're watching something, you're watching a piece of fiction. Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. William Makepeace Thackeray breaks the fourth wall. He is directly addressing the reader so that you know you're watching a play. Charlotte Bronte does this too. She directly addresses the reader. A good example, I think, of this is Home Alone. Also, Kevin is constantly making eye contact. He's looking into the lens, looking at the viewer like, do you see this tomfoolery I'm dealing with? But it also reminds you, I'm watching something that isn't real. Rooney is pointing out that regardless of how perfect someone seems, it is a facade. Also, again, remember that Nick is an actor on stage. He also ties into this idea, this concept of on stage, off stage. We have Frances and Bobby who perform spoken word poetry together, and it seems like Frances and Bobby are they're so in sync on the stage, but really their relationship is quite odd. It has a lot of tension in it, so a lot of what we see is a facade. Again, themes. We get the themes, right? We're like, yeah. We get it. It's the way they're done here that makes me not care. It is just, drum roll please, boring and shallow. Keywords for this book for me. I would say an intriguing, fresh, and contemporary take on these same ideas. That's my neighbor. Convenient Storeman by Sayaka Murata, where she has this character who knows how to mask in certain social situations, but the whole time she's like, this is such a joke. And it's so twisted and dark. Sayaka Murata nails it. Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. Not my favorite book, but Stephanie Danler is such a gifted, evocative writer, and she does it in such a fresh way, using the environment of a restaurant with the main character as a waitress and how she has to turn on and turn off, and she has to learn how to turn on and turn off for the guest to create this facade of perfection for the guest. Immaculate. I get what she's doing, and she's a talented writer. I'm going to say it, I really don't think that Sally Rooney is a good writer. Christmas night, my cousin meets my grandmother's house, and my cousin and her husband, who I consider my cousin, he married to the family, so he's a cousin. We were talking about Rooney. He's read Conversations with Friends. He actually liked it way more than I did, but he agreed with me. He said, objectively, she's not a good writer. And I believe in nuance. What works for you may not work for me. What works for me may not work for you. However, Sally Rooney is the only author I think I've come across. That's not true. Kristen Hanna is not a good writer. Her editor, she needs a new one. I said what I said. Sally Rooney, I think objectively, is one of the only authors I'm comfortable arguing that she's just not a good writer. And he was like, yeah, her writing is not noteworthy at all. We even compared her to Emily Henry. Like, Emily Henry is a way better writer than Sally Rooney. But I think that because Sally Rooney gets put in this category of literary fiction, and Emily Henry, which Emily Henry argues in her book Beach Read, which I still think that book was overhyped, that because she's writing romance, she's never going to be considered that great. Emily Henry is actually a better writer and has better command over the English language and sentence structure and grammar structure than Rooney. But Rooney's considered literary. There is a lot of Frances and other characters observing themselves in mirrors. This is also symbolizing how one perceives the self. Tolstoy actually does this a lot in War and Peace. If you pay attention, there are a lot of characters looking at themselves in the mirror. It's the same idea. And Tolstoy is masterful at it. When Bobby talked about me, I felt like seeing myself. When Bobby talked about me, it felt like seeing myself in a mirror for the first time. I also looked in actual mirrors more often. I started taking a close interest in my face and body, which I'd never done before. If this was an attempt to make Frances clever, like I'm just so different that I have never looked at myself in the mirror. I'm so edgy. And then once I started doing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's so amazing. When I break out the Kim K voice, I'm not happy. cringe, gag, miss me with it. It's just so cringy. Nobody does this. This is not realistic at all. And it's just, who thinks of themselves like this? You've never really processed yourself in the mirror? Really? Okay, not believable. At this point, I felt an awkward lack of self-recognition. And I realized that I couldn't visualize my own face and body at all. It was like someone had lifted the end of an invisible pencil and just gently erased my entire appearance. This was curious and actually not unpleasant, though I was also aware that I was cold and shivering. I hate it. What? It needs reworking. Those two sentences need reworking. They're a bit clunky. And oftentimes reading conversations with friends, I had to reread several sentences over to figure out if there were typos. Like, this is just, what are the editors doing? This book makes me actually angry. And I'm going to really get into why at the end, because in my line of work, I couldn't get away with this. My blood pressure is getting up. I'm getting hot. Okay. And Francis, I can't relate. I don't know what it feels like to be duller than watching paint dry in 95% humidity. I have never met anybody who's this dull, ever. Who? This character makes zero effort to be interesting. Frances is lazy. She's a lazy character. She makes no effort. Nobody in this book makes any effort, but especially Frances. Miss me with it. Man, this book makes me livid. Frances constantly talks about being cold, not only physically, but that she is a cold person. She's cold personality-wise. She's cold emotionally. And it's just so mind-blowing to her that Nick, this really amazing, attractive actor, because Nick is hot and he's hot. I don't care. That how could this hot guy be that into me? I just don't see how. I'm just so cold. It's disgusting. It's cringe. And this is my rant. And I see this has got to stop in literature. It gave me major pick me, I'm not like other girls vibes. And I hated it. We have got to stop this trend. It is not cute. And it is a very lazy way to characterize females in books. It's dull. Can we stop? Let the character just be who she is and stop saying, I'm not like other girls. Because you said that, yes, you are. You're basic. I hate it. It is such a lazy way to characterize females who are maybe different. Let them just be different. Whatever different means. Just let them be who they are and stop projecting this, I'm not like other people, so I must be more unique than you. It's pretentious, it's dull, and it's immature. It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out to try to make edgy characters who aren't edgy at all. And that's actually a reason why I didn't like Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I know, shock horror, that book was also boring. The main character was like, I'm not like other women. It's easy. It's a cop-out. It's lazy. It's lazy characterization. My pulse is actually up. Okay. Lastly, Rooney has been known to address current affairs in her books, which, okay, a lot of authors do that. A lot of authors contemporarily do that. Authors have been doing that since the dawn of time. They use literature as a way to critique the status quo. Okay, do that. Just do it well. It's not done well here. Being a Marxist, out of her own mouth, Sally Rooney is a Marxist. She critiques capitalism. Capitalism is the new thing to critique these days, especially in the young millennials and Gen Z. Okay, whatever. Fine, critique it all you want to. Just do it well. This book is so shallow and confusing at times that when she does critique things like capitalism, it actually makes no sense. I was confused reading this book. I'm like, what are you trying to say to me? What are you trying to say? And it's almost like she's trying to mask it in this so much analogy and metaphor that it's actually working against her. And it comes off again as pretentious and convoluted and way more complicated than it needs to be. Like, it's not that deep. Just say what you mean to say and move on. There is a section in which Frances is having this internal monologue, so she's narrating about employment and labor and products from the perspective, it's not saying I'm a Marxist, but it is Marxist ideology regarding the relationship, because she's talking about the relationship between the laborer, the product, and how can the laborer ever be properly compensated for what it is that they have produced. I have read Marx, I have studied Marx at the academic level. I could go get my Marx Engels reader right off my shelf over there. This is not unique because it is almost copy-paste thinking and logic, which makes me livid. There's no spin on it. She might as well just have quoted Marx and put a one in there instead refer to in notes. Marx, verbatim. I have even watched interviews on Rooney talking about this, and I kid you not, I am so familiar with Marx that she was parroting. That's it. There's nothing unique about this. I hate that. What do you think? Stop parroting other people to sound edgy, to make it seem like you're having a unique thought when you don't. You are parroting somebody else's theology and theory, and there's nothing in there about what you think. Boring. Fine, believe what you want to believe, but put a spin on it. What do you think? Who are you as a person? No wonder her characters are so boring. Watch her in an interview. It's like watching paint dry. This is why I can't relate to these characters, because I am not like this. I don't use copy paste logic. I'm actually angry. Also, this is what makes me livid about Sally Rooney and her books, and the fact that she has the audacity to preach this in a novel. Because I think the word privileged is overused in today's society. Some people start talking about privilege, and I tune out. However, this theory is rich to me, coming from a person who is experiencing it's privilege on a platter. She has the powerhouse of capitalism pushing these books in all its glory. Major publishing companies. I'm talking big 5 publishing houses. Have you seen the promo when she has a book that's going to be released? Look at the promo that was done for Beautiful World, Where Are You? I'm talking swag bags like you've never seen. The advanced reader copy swags where it was insane. It was marketing at its finest and PR at its finest. And as a person who works in public relations and communications, I can spot a spade when I see a spade. It was marketing to a T. It was so immaculately done. That's all capitalism, baby. How you going to bite the hand that feeds you? That was economics econ 101. Yes, let's critique the machine that is paying the bills beyond what most people will ever see in their lifetime. This is an opportunity. If she's so for getting out of this cog, fine, critique capitalism. Capitalism has a lot to answer for. It is rough around the edges for sure. Anything can be corrupted. This is an opportunity to talk about independent publishing. This is an opportunity, if you're so against it, why don't you get independently published? The math ain't mathing. The irony does not evade me. And to me, it just reeks of pretentiousness, and I'm going to use a strong word. It's a bit hypocritical. This is how she talked about capitalism, and it is the most confusing sentence in the book. I wasn't repelled as such. I read books. I was familiar with the idea of capitalism. This sentence is so badly written. I gotta start over. I wasn't repelled as such. I read books. I was familiar with the idea of capitalism was the really crazy thing. Passive voice. We gotta stop. But I had thought people who were hospitalized for psychiatric problems were different from the people I knew. That sentence makes zero sense. It is so poorly written. I don't know if I've ever been this angry at a book. I'm livid. That this is what gets published. Correlation does not equal causation, stats 101, which, I got a background in. How did the editor not catch that? Is she trying to say that there's a correlation between insanity and capitalism? Write it a different way. What is the editor doing? The editor needs to edit. That was so convoluted and so poorly done and riddled with the passive voice that it was confusing. That is why passive voice is often edited, because it is convoluted and confusing. There are times when the passive voice is appropriate, but there's a reason why it's often edited to active voice. It makes it clear to the reader and the audience what action is happening to who or what. You need to make that clear. That's just a bad sentence. It's just bad. It's just not well done. Let's conclude. Silent about the passive voice. That's another reason why I critiqued Hamnet the way that I did. I don't have a review on it on YouTube. I have a review of Hamnet on my Instagram. That book was entirely written in passive voice for a good reason. There's a reason why she did it. O'Farrell did it. But passive voice is also very fatiguing to the reader, because the reader is trying to figure out who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who, what, when, where, why, and how, because they're trying to figure out, again, what's happening to who and why and what. Passive voice is fatiguing, and it makes things more complicated than they need to be. And passive voice can be difficult to avoid and to edit. I edit passive voice in my own writing all the time. And sometimes I have to have other people look at it, because that's what good editors do. And that's why you have multiple people look at your stuff to help make things as smooth and crisp and as seamless as possible. Again, I think that the themes here are interesting. I just think that they're poorly done. It's trite, shallow, and bland. It also reads to me like Rooney threw in the hot topics of the day and just got praised for it, because she is a millennial who wants to act like she's, judging the status quo. But the execution is so shallow and it's poorly written. I felt like she was also virtue signaling to me. Now I see why people call Sally Rooney pretentious. And I don't like calling books pretentious. People call A Little Life pretentious because these characters are rich. There's a difference. This book comes across as at times like virtue signaling. Coming from a person who parrots marks. Miss me with it. Just miss me with it. Don't preach to me. Nobody likes being preached to. I have a brain. I know my own mind. And the world is way more nuanced than what she presents here. There's no nuance to these conversations that these characters are attempting to have about current affairs. No nuance. Everything is superficially discussed, which is probably the point. She's trying to prove that nobody has a personality. But it's just so horribly done. It's horribly written. I am too mature at this point in my life. I'm out of my 20s. For something like this to appeal to me, because I have also experienced enough in life. Have I been through certain things that other people have been through? No. But I don't live under a rock. And everybody goes through something in life. I have experienced enough life at this point that this display of current affairs and thought is just juvenile to me at this point. And I hated these characters. There's a difference between a character who you love to hate. No, I just hated them. I loved them all. They were horrible. They're horrid, and they're also not well crafted. The writing. I have ranted, I think, the most about the writing. Like I said, it's often not what you say, it's how you say it. And she's just not a good writer to me. I just don't get the rate. I don't get it. She's not a good writer. I write a lot for work. She's not an elegant writer. People have said she's blunt. Yes, I've read other blunt authors, but there's an elegance to their writing. There's a maturity to the writing. She doesn't have it, in my opinion. I write a lot for work. Not narratives, but I do write a lot for work. And the things that I write, whether they're 2 sentences or a whole page or text with graphics, they could potentially, depending on the audience and who it's being geared to and who, it has to go through all these checks and balances, it can be seen by hundreds, if not potentially thousands to tens of thousands of people. And what I'm writing about is not sexy. It's very practical. It goes through a lot of proofing and editing before it goes out there. And it irritates me to no end when I see critically acclaimed authors, getting away with this type of writing. It's not good. I could not post this for work without one of my superiors saying, "Are you crazy? Who approved this?" It's not who's going to understand that, because the type of work that we do when we are doing communications for our clientele, we have to make sure that it's written in such a way that anybody could understand it. The goal is to make sure that it's understood, and it goes through, and sometimes we have to really simplify very complex things, like engineering projects, so that the average person can understand what they're looking at, because they're not engineers. I have written press releases and social media posts that are more eloquent than this book. And I don't say that to sound arrogant. I say that because it is fact. I should be able to put something so that when the media picks it up, they're like, "We know exactly what you're talking about. This is great." Everything about this book was a miss for me. I hated it so much. I thought it was so bad that I was like, I'm completely done with Sally Rooney. I will never read anything that she puts out again. I hated it. This book made me mad. It's the worst book I've ever read. It's not the themes, it's the writing. The writing is just objectively bad in my opinion. I'm done. I've been going on for 40 minutes. I know that this was an intense review, and I don't apologize for it. I said what I said. That's my opinion. I don't like it. I don't like this book. I know that there are people who love Sally Rooney. I'm just not one of those people. And I know that she has this army of people who would just defend her at all costs. If you like her. Okay. That's no skin off my nose. I really don't care. There are books that I like that other people hate, and I'm so confident in what I like that somebody could have a varying opinion, and I'm unfazed by it. So yeah. This is my final review of this book. My review on it on Instagram was posted weeks ago. I am officially chuffed to be done with this book. I'm getting it out of my house. I hated it. I'm done. This was a 1 out of 5 for me. Maybe it should be a 0 out of 5. I've never read anything quite like this. Please let me know that what do you feel about Sally Rooney and her writing? Sometimes people try to come into these types of reviews that negatively review something that somebody likes and try to say, "Well, you missed the point." No, boo-boo, Alana did not miss the point. I just didn't like it. And then they try to I've seen this on my friends' accounts, try to make it seem like you're the stupid one. No, I just didn't like it, honey. I didn't have to like it. And I'm too grown to care. So, yes, I'm done with Sally Rooney. I'm happy to be done with this book, and it's getting out of my life. And okay, we're done. Please leave a comment, subscribe if you would like. If not, whatever. Sometimes when I post, the last time I posted a critique of Sally Rooney with Mr. Salary, I lost followers. I don't care. Unfollow. Or follow if you're like, finally, somebody said the thing. I'm also on Instagram if you would like to follow me there, and I will see you in the next one. Don't worry. This is probably one of the most savage reviews I will ever post. I even picked up my lipstick. Bye.